All right, let's dive into the story of a llama named Pajama. Now, Pajama is a super friendly, fun loving guy. And his story, well, it kicks off with a pretty explosive experiment.
And that experiment brings us to this one question, central question. It really sets the whole scene for everything that's about to happen. So, what does happen when a soda rocket meets a llama's roof?
So, let's meet our main character, Pajama. Picture this. His cottage is, well, it's a mess. We're talking piles of laundry, dishes everywhere. But he's that guy, the one everyone wants to hang out with. Super quick with a joke, always ready for a good time. Fun is absolutely his top priority. Work, not so much. So you can imagine when Pajama caught wind of this rumor, the one about putting candy in diet soda, he just couldn't resist. He had to try it. He did, loved that crazy fizz, and his immediate next thought was, okay, how can I make this bigger? And he went all out. He got the biggest bottles he could find, a literal mountain of candy. And where did he set up this mega rocket? Oh, just right in the middle of his living room. Yep, he was planning an indoor launch. You can just hear the countdown, right? 3, 2, 1. Whoosh! The rocket just shoots up with this insane fizz straight into the ceiling. But oh no, it did not stop there. It blasted a massive hole right through his thatched hay roof. And just like that, everything was covered in the sticky, soda-soaked mess.
And Pajama's first reaction to all this chaos? Pure excitement. He thought the launch was incredible. But then, he noticed the giant gaping hole in his ceiling and the sticky state of his cottage. His solution? So simple. I'll deal with it later. I mean, the sun was shining, it was a perfect day to go play tag with his friends.
But of course, that night the weather completely turned. And it didn't just rain, it poured. With no roof, Pajama's little cottage just flooded. He spent the entire long, cold night shivering in a puddle, telling himself, okay, first thing in the morning, I'm fixing this. But then morning came, and it was like a whole new world. The sun was out, and it burned away every single trace of the rain. You could hear the birds singing, the air was warm and just so inviting. It was one of those perfect early autumn days. And when you're faced with a day like that, the thought of doing actual work felt just unbearable to Pajama. So, the roof could wait. He literally splashed through his muddy floor, grabbed his picnic basket, and headed out to his favorite field.
So after a fantastic day having a picnic, he gets back to his roofless house. And his mattress? Still soaked from the night before. So he does the only thing he can do. He flips it over to the side that's just a little bit drier. And wouldn't you know it, that night the rain came back. This time it was a cold, steady drizzle that just did not let up until morning.
And here we go again. That miserable, wet night was followed by, you guessed it, another perfect sunny day. Pajama knew, he really did, that he should fix the roof. But the creek nearby was just calling his name. It was too tempting, so the roof could wait, just a little longer. He ends up having this massive water fight with some bears down at the creek. Even a few frogs jumped in on the action. The fun only came to a halt when a huge thunderstorm started to roll in. He rushed home, but no roof, remember? So he and the frogs had to cram themselves under his soggy, muddy bed for yet another miserable night. Okay, so day 4. He looks at his roofless house and thinks, this would be a good day to thatch a roof. But then his eyes land on a friend's bike, and a new thought pops into his head. Actually, this is an even better day to learn how to ride a bike. This, as you can imagine, led to a whole series of hilarious falls, first trying with one bike, and then, for some reason, trying with 2, which went even worse. So that night, Pajama's just sleeping out under the stars, and the rain starts up again. But this time, this wasn't just another storm. No, this was the big one. The water just started rising and fast. It was pressing and pressing against the walls of his little house until finally, bam, the front door bursts open with this huge surge, and a tidal wave of water just rushes inside.
So Pajama wakes up, and what does he find? His mattress is floating. Not just in his house, but floating out the door and cruising down the flooded street, which has basically turned into a river. And his reaction to this completely absurd situation? He just pulls the covers over his head and goes right back to sleep. Eventually, he wakes up again. But this time, it's not the sound of water. It's someone poking him in the ribs. He looks around. He's not on a river anymore. Nope, he's in the middle of a field, and he's surrounded by a bunch of beavers who are all busy planting carrots. So Pajama asks one of the beavers, "Hey, why are you all working? It's such a nice day." And the beaver just kind of explains it's an old saying. You gotta make hay while the sun shines, you know? The idea is you get your work done when you have the chance, so you can go play later and not have anything to worry about.
And you can see the wheels turning in Pajama's head. It's slowly starting to click. So he poses this, totally hypothetical situation to the beaver, this wild example about a guy whose roof gets blown off. And the beaver's response is just super simple. If his roof got blown off, he'd fix it right away. Because if he didn't, well, he might get soaked or, maybe even get washed right out of his house on his own mattress.
Those words from the beaver just kept echoing in his mind. And right then, he looked up and saw a brand new cloud forming on the horizon. That was it. Pajama finally turned around and headed home. This time, he was determined to get to work.
And man, it was a huge job. His house was an absolute disaster zone. He had to scrub, sweep, mop. He cleaned and cleaned until the cottage was totally spotless. Then he went out and gathered sticks and reeds, and finally, at long last, he built himself a brand new roof. When he was finally finished with everything, he just collapsed onto his clean, dry bed. And sure, the work itself hadn't been fun at all, but that feeling of accomplishment, of being warm and tidy and done, it felt amazing. And wouldn't you know it, just as he lies down, the rain starts to fall again. But this time was different. This time, that gentle patter on his brand new roof, it was soothing. He snuggled down into his blankets, feeling warm and dry and completely safe. And so that's the story of Pajama the Llama, a messy llama, a broken roof, and a journey that started with a soda rocket disaster, went through a whole bunch of very wet nights, and finally ended with a solid new roof, just in the nick of time.